So you're a therapist turned SEO strategist. What made you change professions? What sparked that change?
So, I loved being a therapist. Okay. So I got to tell you, like, it's a really important skill. And I was in grad school. So after grad school, I worked at a clinic and I started my own private practice. I mean, I did all the traditional stuff. And one of the things that I became very aware of very quickly was that therapists weren't paid very well. I had a lot of student loans. I definitely had stuff I had to deal with. And the industry was not at the time really open to the idea that therapists could move in a direction of like honestly making a really good living. So not that it's all about the money, but the idea that, we go into debt for so much and then you're making $8 an hour, right? So that opened a doorway for me of like trying out a lot of different jobs. I had my therapy gig, but then on the side, I answered an ad to become a relationship salesperson, which was this really random ad I saw in the paper that dates me, I know, but
I was gonna say, what is a relationship salesperson?
right. So when I was in college, I tended bar and I was like, well, I think you're having all these conversations with people. So I didn't really think a lot of it. I just knew I had the ability to talk to people and I was comfortable because of the therapy training. I was comfortable having lots of conversations. So when I answered this ad in the paper, it ended up being a job that was connected to John Gray. He's the guy that wrote the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. So that led to teaching dating workshops, which was really interesting. I was young, I was single. I was like, this is a lot of fun, right? So I taught these people how to date based on the model that's in his book, Mars and Venus on a Date. And at that point, I got a call that I had taught more dating workshops than anybody in his full organization. And would I come work for them? So I ended up working for John and running his websites, really with no background knowledge of how to do that. I just knew how to talk to people. I knew the world of therapy. I understood the complex dynamics that happened in relationships when people didn't communicate well. And it became this like kind of a jigsaw puzzle to present that online and do it in a way that people would read in short form content. And, this was 2002. I mean, this is a long time ago. Nothing like what we deal with now was even there. So I built a membership and we wrote exclusive content and people paid $9.95 a month for it. Right. So all of that really opened my eyes up to the idea that online communication and blogging was a way to reach more people. And my goal in graduate school was always to find a way to help more people. So online just became this like super simple like answer to that problem. You could help more people if you educated them in the ways that they were open to being communicated with. So in that time, it was blogging. Now it's podcasts or videos, right? AI, right? All of these things. So it was a very unplanned segue out of therapy. And I moved around the therapy world for years. I worked at a publishing company for a long time, teaching people how to blog and how to write and how to communicate online. And at the same time, I did SEO. So the company I worked for was a startup. And, startups, you do every job in Alphabet used to do everything, right? So that meant doing SEO. We all learned SEO from the ground up. And that when I realized that I could work with individual therapists and help them build the practice they wanted to have with the niche they wanted to be in. So I'm a therapist and I train in couples work and I want to help co-parents that have dealt with divorce. Like when I kind of knew you could make all of those niches happen, I was hooked. Right. And I never went back to therapy, but I've been doing private practice development and helping people build businesses for, I mean, a very long time now. So I'm glad that I'm one of those rare people on the planet that uses my college degrees in my day-to-day job, right? Because that therapy training was the cornerstone of everything that I do. No, that's a little bit of that story.
That's cool. No, it's super fascinating, and I imagine that like your background in therapy probably informed a lot of your like business acumen, relationship building. I mean, so much of business is mindset and relationships. So I think like, do you find that you're still using your therapy degree now, even though you're more like in the SEO marketing space?
Well, absolutely. Um, because about 80% of my clients are in the mental health space, understanding the ins and outs of mental health makes the relationship with my clients a lot easier, right? So it's, it's very inside baseball, as they say. So I'm able to speak their language. The work I do often is teaching people we can't talk in buzzwords. We can't talk in therapies. We have to talk, the real conversational language that people like. People aren't looking for generalized anxiety disorder. They're looking for, anxiety services or anxiety therapy, right? So I think that that's very helpful. I also feel like there's a lot of anxiety from the therapy community about being online and about like how much they expose of themselves in on their about page, or what they have to talk about in terms of their own value systems or what matters to them to be able to put their services out there. And a lot of people are anxious about AI. So it has been very helpful to understand how things like anxiety show up in the business place, and sort of have that in the back of my mind. And I think it makes me a more compassionate business owner, compassionate towards my team, compassionate towards, what my clients go through. Because, I mean, this world, it changes so fast. And in and of it's like we find sure footing in something and then poof, there's another thing. Poof, there's another thing. Right. And so being a grounded source and helping people not freak out because there's one more thing to learn or one more thing to do, right? So I feel like it's definitely helps.
Hmm. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, we just mentioned before when we were talking about kind of the purpose of the podcast and helping people lean into AI instead of just being afraid. Because I think so much of the time when people are afraid of something, it's just because they don't understand it or they don't know how to use it. And then once they do understand, it's like, oh, it becomes a tool and then they can go and build something with it, for instance. So I think that's really cool that you've paired like therapy and marketing and SEO and AI kind of all together into business. I think that that's really like quite rare and unique, but also like makes total sense at the same time. So
It was
yeah.
very organic. Like it wasn't, I don't think I ever set out thinking, oh, I want to line all these things up and figure it out. They all kind of fell together, and AI is fascinating. Like, I mean, oh my gosh, like there's so much to think and talk about, every day. It's like, a whole new, I feel like I wake up in the morning and I read my Substacks and I'm thinking about like, what's the new thing I'm learning? And it's just a piece of the puzzle, piece of the puzzle, piece of the puzzle every day. So
Yeah.
fascinating.
And I think too, like maybe even like realizing, like just as you said that there's never going to be like an end point of, oh, I know everything about AI or I know everything about business. And so it's like getting comfortable with this. Like I was just talking to someone else about this, about being in the learner's mindset of, continually upskilling and learning, reading about AI, reading about SEO, whatever it is, marketing, whatever your business field is, and just like realizing things are just pacing so quickly. Like it's just a continual evolution, and it's okay not to know everything. It's okay not to know every AI tool that's out there or to even use them all, and really to kind of think about, okay, maybe playing around with a few, but then going, okay, what's resonating or like what's calling me? And even like what you said about falling into this kind of industry or business. And it's, I think really cool because I mean, I'm similar in my story, but so often I think as people, we think, oh, if it's going to happen this way and I have to like push, push, push and make it happen. And then, meanwhile, life's like pushing us in this other direction, And so I think that's a really cool testament to the fact that we don't have to figure it all out and we don't have to know where life's going to go or where our business is going to go. And maybe it'll be really positive and better than we could have planned?
That's right. I totally agree with everything you said. I do. Yeah, I do. I feel like AI is one of those, I mean, I've been in the SEO space, so I've for 15 years, right? So Penguin, Panda, Changes, like all this sort of social media. We did videos and then Facebook Live came in, videos were gone and now they're back. And there is something about so I think that there's something about having a core foundation for who you are in your business and developing confidence in that. And that is kind of the rock you stand on. So I have a value with my clients that I think it's a huge compliment when someone reads my website and they say, oh, wow, I read your copy and I feel like I just had a conversation with you, right? I think that that is really amazing. So, authenticity is an overlooked skill set between our writing, our videos, our audios, and the way the consumer experiences us. And the more we can bridge those gaps and people can really get to know who we are, if the foundation of our skills and what we offer is pretty solid, then we can lean into, oh, I'm going to do podcasting, or I'm going to do AI, or I'm going to do this or do that. And the core of us doesn't shift. And that gives people more stability. You know what I mean? They're not in a place of feeling like, I don't know who I am. I got to, or I have to reinvent myself all the time. Yeah. And I think with my clients, a lot of people that have been in the therapy space have this like rooted education that says, I understand the fundamentals of, depression or anxiety or these common things that show up in my office. But, now we're talking about FOMO, or now we're talking about body shaming, or now we're talking about, whatever's happening today. And they still have confidence. The clients that are not in the therapy space don't always have that. And it's something I want to empower them to find, right? Because once they feel confident in what they offer and the value that they bring to their clients, then you can say, oh, let's sprinkle in a little AI, or let's sprinkle in a little something else. And they're more stable. It's like the roots of their tree are buried deep as opposed to shallow. And so when things change, it's less shaky. It doesn't rock them to their core. And I think that that's important because the truth in my viewpoint is that, oh, we've barely seen where AI is going to take us. I mean, we've barely tipped it. So it's going to, I mean, we think it's disruptive today, right? I mean, let's revisit this in 2 years and have another podcast and,
Yeah.
imagine where we'll be. So we can't even imagine it yet. And the more people can understand the heart of what they bring to their business, the less they're gonna, wobble in the wind. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And so the question I have then is, if someone, for instance, like you mentioned, some people don't have that foundation, don't have those roots, that structure, like how do you help your clients get that? Like if someone's listening and thinking, oh, that sounds great, I want to be more authentic, I don't know who I am. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, how do you sort of, yeah, work with clients in that?
I think I do a handful of things. I do this ideal client exercise with clients that's psychographic as opposed to demographic. So psychographic meaning like more of the flavors of who someone is, as opposed to I work with women 35 to 50 who are white collar or live in this part of the world or whatever, right? I really want to understand the mindset that a client wants to work with because a- and and I'm an evidence and I'm a data girl, right? So I want to be able to prove to people or disprove sometimes that there are people looking for their services. So when I understand who my client wants to help or what they want to bring to the world, the next really logical question is anybody looking for it? Does anybody care? Is anybody buying it? Are there do you have competition? What is your competition charge? How can you do it differently? And in the same way that SEO commands that we have a unique approach to our content, if we just use AI and write cookie cutter content, it will never be seen, right? Because it's already out. So when you think about the democratization of search and the fact that Google is going to make sure that the stable stuff, the stuff that is the bread and butter of a topic, is always represented on the first page. If you have a different point of view, you can squeak in there. You can show up in ways that surprise people. So I think helping clients understand this, like two sides of it, like who do you want to be to the world and how does the world look for you? Then you can work on authenticity because authenticity, kind of falls in the middle. I am who I am, my unique values, my unique approach, this particular psychographic group of people I want to work with. That unique subset is amazing. And when it's proven that the world's looking for you, then you have a business model. Like then you can really step back and say, okay, look, like, yeah, you can model that out. And it makes logical sense to people. And I think people appreciate that.
Mm, that's cool. Yeah, and even just a piece of like for me, like a big part of it has been, what am I drawn to? Like what do I enjoy doing? Really, like that I would, like I can't remember who said this, if it was Warren Buffett or someone, but it was like what do you do for fun that other people look at and think of as work? What do you, enjoy doing? And then, yeah, like you said, can that then be, is someone looking for that service? Is someone looking for that? And then you have a business that you love and are probably going to be really good at and outperform people in. So
Yeah.
I found for me, especially just to add on to what you said, is just, yeah, what do I like doing? What am I spending my time? Where am I drawn towards? And then, yeah, and then seeing where you end up as well. Yeah. Just
That's right. Yeah. And the idea that work is play, work is not, I never wanted to be one of those people that was like, "Oh my gosh, it's 4:59. Please let me get off where I am." I put my heart into what I do. I think just about everything I do. So it might as well be something I really enjoyed. I don't think it in my career path everything has been fun. Like I don't want to I mean there's been moments of learning and struggling and trying to figure out like how do I be myself without a boss kind of putting something on me or somebody telling me to do it a particular way. I think that's the joy of entrepreneurship. Like where you really and there's two sides to that, right? You can win really big and fail big. Right? Oh, but
depends on the day and time of day.
right. Yeah. But there is something special about knowing that you're all in for yourself and for your clients and the ripple out there in the world, right? So, and I want my clients to feel like that too.
Mm,
Mhm.
that's cool. Yeah. And so how do you see, like, because obviously you work in SEO with the influence of AI obviously coming in, what do you see that impact being or how that is unfolding? Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of implications. I think in terms of SEO, the trust factors of brands is going to become very big. So it's our, we already have established brands, Nike or Starbucks or whatever airline, there's already things like that. But there's an opportunity for the rest of us to root down and become, I'm trained, I'm educated, I do this, here's the history of me. And to kind of demand that show gets showcased across all the places that we, do our business. The big buzzword is omnipresent SEO, right? So, being the same you everywhere you go, which is another way of saying authentic, right? So I think AI just makes that easier. You can go, I did something, I was telling my story, my long story to a friend not too long ago. And she said, Melanie, you really need to like write that out. I was never going to write that out. So I just pulled out my phone, put the mic on and said it all. Right. And then I had it in Google Doc. Right. And then when I had it in the Google Doc, I put it into chat and I was like, okay, help me think through this. Like, I like this. I don't like this. Like, how do I, what do I keep? What do I get rid of? Chat and Gemini give people a working brain partner. So in the ADHD space, there's a body double is a topic that we talk about, which is an ADHD tool where you basically like, I have ADHD and I struggle to stay focused, right? So I'm just saying I don't actually have ADHD, but if I did, right, so I struggle to stay focused, right? And then I sit with someone and they help me stay focused, right? Not because they're interacting or doing things with me, but just simply because they're in the room with me, right?
Okay.
Chat does that for people,
Mm.
right? As a writer, it gets rid of the blank page, which is so terrifying to people. And this concept that we've talked about as writers for years of the messy first draft is actually borderline brilliant, right? So I think one of the tricks with AI ultimately is going to be how do you not just take what chat gives you, but help chat work with your brain to make you better. And then it's 1 + 1 = 3 as opposed to 1 + 1 = 2. So, I mean, and it's going to be everywhere. And I think in a lot of ways it'll simplify our lives. We'll be able to say, I want to travel and this is what I want to do. And it's going to go, bam, here's your itinerary. I did get my first lead from chat last
Oh,
week.
cool.
I was amazed. So a gentleman in the DC market, who's a therapist who's looking for someone with his website and SEO and stuff, uh, contacted me, scheduled on my calendar. Total stranger. I'd never heard of him before. And at the end of the call, I said, "Well, how'd you hear about me?" And he said, "I was in ChatGPT and I was working out like what's wrong with my backlinks on my website, and I asked who is the best digital marketers in the area, and your name came up."
Oh, wow.
I was like, "Oh my gosh,"
That's
right?
cool.
I thought that was amazing. Yeah. So, And it's just all really good fundamental SEO that and being out there. So AI isn't changing what we have to do to be observed, to be discovered. It's just helping us be discovered in ways that people want to get information. And I think that's going to be a really good thing.
No, I think so too. I was just, before we hopped on the call, reading an article from Backlinko, and it was actually a really good article about just they're calling it generative engine optimization, like instead of like GEO instead of SEO, and talking about how, like, yeah, a lot of the parameters that are in SEO will be obviously duplicated or similar in GEO or in like language models, like ChatGPT. But it was made this really interesting, like, nuance with, say, ChatGPT, where it's giving people much more specific information. And so, yeah, if someone's like, looking for something hyper specific, it's more likely to show someone who's a better match than someone who has like more backlinks or what have you. So, and same in um like it's pulling data from Google, but it might be from page 5 or page 12. Like it's looking for that specificity. And I think that ties into the piece of being authentic and being specific about, like, I work with these niches or this is who I am, because then it's wanting to connect people with like very specific helpful information rather than just a blanket. This person's obviously ranks really well because they've got lots of backlinks and they have lots of website content. And so I think that's cool. So it was sort of highlighting that, smaller practitioners or smaller businesses will be able to get found probably perhaps easier because it's going to be a more customized sort of experience, which it sounds like it is for that guy who found you.
Yeah.
It's so
Well,
cool.
I think it is. And I think it gives, I don't think people enjoy asking the one question in Google, having to hunt through all the stuff, having a question come up, go back and ask it. I don't think we love that experience. I think I read a data point that said the average question in ChatGPT is like 23 or 24 words, right? Versus like 3 or 4 in a Google query,
Right.
right? And so people are more intelligent than the structure of Google has allowed them to be, right? The way it's just kind of rudimentary and it's so much better than it was before, right?
Right.
But it too is still growing and I think AI, chat like bots are going to allow all of us to interact with information the way we want to. So we can be as novice and, and not know the answers, but have a question. And the other thing is you can ask a really dumb question and you can get a really good answer. My
Right.
husband said something the other day. He was trying to find something and all the words weren't coming. What is the name of that dumb guy who did this quote in this movie? I don't know how it figured out what he was talking about. Gave him the answer.
Mind reader.
I was like, this is amazing, right? So it does. It lets us all be more real, because we don't have all the answers. So I think it's more even though it's bot, it's a little more human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I I treat it like a friend, like a person. And yeah,
Mhm.
I was saying this to someone else the other day about, rather than just asking it questions, I've started asking it to ask me questions to help me tease out, what am I actually wanting? What am I actually looking for? And helping me to think outside the box, because it's challenging to like ask yourself a question when you're trying to answer a question, but
That's
having,
brilliant.
yeah, having just like, something to, or someone to ask a question, have you thought about this or that? It just triggers these new kind of thought loops. Yeah, so it's been thought playing with that.
That is brilliant. I'm going to borrow that if not.
Amazing. And so, what would you sort of say to people who might be like scared about AI, or they're afraid they're going to lose their job, or, like, I think the future around AI, like we mentioned, is quite uncertain and quite unpredictable, and we don't really know how far reaching the effects are going to be or what they're going to be. Yeah, what would you sort of say to people who are maybe a little bit afraid or anxious or, yeah, don't know how to get started with it?
I think I have a couple thoughts. One is try it out. You know what I mean? Just go pick whichever one you like, or that you've even heard of and go play around with it and see how it works. Ask it questions that are easy for you, like what's the best thing for my dog if they, like they don't like to go for long walks, but they need to walk because they're old. Like, just go ask it questions and see how it interacts. if you're in an industry where people are already talking about changes to the industry because of AI and you're starting to experience it, that might be a signal to you to look at upskilling, and maybe a signal to look at, like go to chat and say, okay, these are my skills. Like, this is what I do. This is what I'm known for. These are my degrees and my experience, right? I'm worried about losing my job. What are things that I could move into career wise that'll have more security or stability? So, like, my husband's back in graduate school, right? So, he just made this decision 18 months ago to try and, learn something new because he doesn't know what's going to happen.
Mm.
So, curiosity about it, I think, is more motivating than fear. So, kind of doing that, I think, makes a big difference. Um, and if I was a betting person, I would say that there's going to be a boomerang to this. I mean, I've lived through a lot and been like on the front lines with my job with a lot of the Google updates and all those disruptive sorts of things. Um, I think there's going to be a boomerang back to human like interaction. I imagine that, in 6 months to 18 months, we're going to see the resurgence of in-person events, conferences, like BNI groups, or Chamber of Commerce, or like in-person communities. In the therapy space, there's something called third spaces. And third spaces we lost a lot of third spaces with the pandemic and the shutdown, because
What is the third space?
so a third space are non-work related places people go to out of shared mutual interest.
Okay.
So let's say, you and I are both into knitting, right? And so there's a knitting club and we want to go learn something. These things are in person and they're online, right? So third spaces are going to have a good resurgence because people want community. Belonging is a natural human need. We all have it. We've talked a lot psychologically about loneliness being this huge barrier that has been in front of all of us, for several years now. And I think there's going to be a boomerang where people are going to want to be together, and they're going to want to, like, so much is happening in the AI space and all of that. How do we relate to one another? How do we be together? And sales will move in person. People will start, networking again, and, doing things like this and meeting strangers, right? And trying out new things. So, if you're curious and you try the tools out, and then look for what you need to feel safe again, to feel comfortable, to feel like, you've got some kind of pathway, you're going to start to feel less antsy and anxious about it, and it will help.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I was thinking that like when I first was like, oh, it's all hitting, it's all coming in. It's like, okay, I think the best thing I can do is just learn as much as possible about AI and just because obviously we're going to need AI automation people, implementation managers. So that was like another piece. I was like, and I really enjoy learning about it and using it. But I was like, okay, yeah, let's just deep dive into this and go, let's lean in instead of like pushing back kind of things. So yeah, but I think that's a really cool thing, like having a plan, having a conversation, yeah, with AI of like, what should I do? Or like, what are my options? And just like, it's almost just like that, like you said, curiosity and brainstorming and just getting the ideas flowing. Um, so then what are some of your like favorite AI tools that you use currently in your business?
So we definitely use ChatGPT, right? So that's been fun, learning how to make these custom GPTs for clients and for ourselves. Like,
Right.
like it's sort of all those things that you intuitively do when you sit down to, like, I work on books with clients sometimes, and, I'll sit down and I have this process in my brain that I don't think I've ever written down on a piece of paper ever. Right. So, I think that can be really great. I use chat so a lot to try and help me think through a problem. I want to approach it this way. What do you think? How does it look? Right. So I use chat for that. Um, I just turned on the Google AI assistant yesterday for the first time
Mhm.
because I'm curious how that works. So, I mean, I don't use I'd use some writing tools, and I have kind of like tried a lot of things and then stopped. I've also used something called originality.ai, right? So I'm curious about how like the content is being written, so I use that to kind of check things like, is this really AI? Like, it looks like AI to me. How does it feel? How do people resonate with it? So those are the tools that I think I've used the most. And some of the writing tools I've bought and canceled. You know what I mean? Like I've purchased it. I bought Jasper for a while and then I canceled it. So I think that some of it's also about what is the infrastructure that you as a user enjoy or like the most. Chat just seems to be the most robust at this point. Kind of the easiest one to use actually. So, oh, and I've used some AI image stuff, but like got a lot of pictures with like six fingers, and I was like, I don't know about this. You got on the wait. So, how'd you get?
It doesn't look quite right here.
Something's really wrong. Three eyeballs. Like, I don't know.
I noticed that ChatGPT actually its images have gotten a lot better. It now can do images too, so I've been
Yeah,
playing
and it hooks into your Canva.
into Canva.
Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
haven't tried that. I'll have
Yeah, so you can hook it into Canva, which is interesting. Because sometimes I'll do like ebooks for people and you need a graphic, and I'm like, how can you, right? So, like I think, and they're all like growing together. So, like as chat gets better, and then Canva gets better, and then the blend together is, easier to
just
use.
improves.
Yeah, yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. And so what would you say people like how do I phrase this? Like what are some maybe downsides of AI or potential like mental health risks that you could see maybe affecting people?
Well, overdependence on it. Like I think it's kind of fun. We all think of it. People, I have a mastermind group that I run, and we had a conversation in the group a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about who's personified it, right? And whose chat's a woman, whose chat's a man. It was an ignored. It was funny, right? So I think it's not a person, you know what I mean? So I think being overly dependent on it thinking for you can be a risk. So we still have to have our opinions. We have to have educated opinions. So um it can be really easy to look at something chat spits out and go, wow, this is brilliant. And it doesn't have cited sources, it doesn't have data points, it doesn't have, evidence that proves what you're doing. And that is going to be something that, and that's not hallucinating, right? It is still good content, but it is not valuable because it's been said 100 times over. So I think that there's a world where people can fall into that as, an educated answer, and it really isn't. So you still have to do due diligence with everything you're doing. Like if you're buying a product, you want to compare things, you want to shop around, like none of that's changing, right? And then from a mental health perspective, it's easy to get in an echo chamber. You know what I mean? We see this.
It's thinking me sure.
Yeah, yeah. Like you could get that loop going where it's like self-fulfilling and you're not challenging yourself, or you're not asking for alternative opinions, or you're not growing. So, I think it's important that people don't just kind of silo too much because we need people. We need relationships. So those would be signs to kind of watch for. Like if you're just like, I'm brilliant, it's great, isn't it awesome? Check it, right? If you're no longer around people because it's so great, check that, right? And, life in moderation, like you should write some of your own content. You should still think about what your social media is. You should still think about, like, is this what I really want to say on my dating profile? Like, I just put what I'm looking for on match.com into here. And, is this really who are they going to meet this person? You know what I mean? Authenticity. We're kind of looping back at that.
That's a good thing. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's something that I've definitely noticed is like the echo chamber. And I'm like, okay, so now I specifically am like, yeah, can you like poke holes in my thing? Or can you be like really constructively critical? Or like, what am I missing? What are my blind spots? And like, because it can just be like a bit of a hype gal, which is great. Sometimes you're like, oh, thank you. Like that makes me feel good. But then sometimes, like you said, it's like checking and going, yeah, is this actually accurate? Or is it just reflecting back to me like this sort of, yeah, echo chamberish stuff. So yeah, I think that's a good point. Definitely worth
Mhm.
checking. Yeah.
Yeah, and as a user of ChatGPT, like I wonder if you don't have to trash your GPTs every now and again. You know what I mean? And just let it like start over and see what happens, because you really can, it's all math, right? And so there's a way that it just starts to loop.
Mm.
So thinking through that is probably something as a business owner to, give some consideration to. Like sometimes I really do need to say, okay, I'm going to start over. Like, and let's see where it is today.
Right. And then you have obviously new knowledge to be able to program it differently and everything. What are some of the GPTs that you sort of set up or run regularly?
Well, so we have one that we continually update sort of about our brand voice, right? We have another one that's regularly updated around how we want to write. You know what I mean? So there's definitely like sort of grammar things because grammar's funny. And I don't understand how ChatGPT has a million M dashes, but like that was something I completely forgot.
I haven't noticed that too.
I know. You're like, where's that? Like you never write with them and now they're everywhere. So we definitely do both of those. Um, for the brand voice, I feel like and I do this with clients. Like we as a practice will interview people to get their brand voice, right? So when we take on building a website for someone or writing their content or both, we will spend time recording them. We'll ask them questions to really let them speak and let them get into some of the, the details and the nuances of what they're really all about and we'll do that periodically. So we'll update that, we kind of get the audio file, like something like this, and then we'll transcribe it, upload it, and then it just gives more flavor to, what that individual brand is all about. You can't, otherwise the loop happens, right?
Right.
Other GPTs that I use, I have a handful of tools. Like I've used a handful of prompt GPTs, where because it all comes down to like asking the right questions. You've alluded to this a handful of times. And I think I read once that the average 40-year-old has a 4,000 word vocabulary and that our vocabulary diminishes as we get older. Right.
Oh, interesting.
So because of that, if we're not wordsmiths and thinking about new words, then you will end up just repeating yourself. Right. So I think it's really important to do easy things like, find other prompts or record voices and then upload and then just constantly sort of keep it fresh. Right. So
That's cool. I like that. I'm going to borrow that. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We're almost at time, but where can people find out more about you and connect with you?
thank you for asking that. So my website is Crownsville Media. I'm sure you'll write this down for people.
I'll put it in the description. Yeah.
Yeah. So crownsvillemedia.com. And so we do SEO, we do websites, we do content, right? About 80% of our clients are in the mental health space. But we're kind of agnostic with the rest, lawyers, doctors, like whatever, the whole thing. A lot of coaches, and we do a lot of hands one-on-one sort of work with people. So it's kind of small to mid-tier businesses. Like I'm usually better with hands-on and conversations like this, right? So yeah, you can find me there. I have some social stuff, but like really my website's the best place to find me.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Well, thank you for being on the show and thank you for sharing your knowledge and thank you everyone for listening.